Hello, friends. Nayaswami Hriman here from the Kameno Hermitage. Today's reading from the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam is stanza 23. And as I have done before, I will read it, and then I will ask Swami Kriyananda to sing the quatrain. Are you ready? Make the most of what we may yet spend, before we too into the dust descend. Dust into dust, and under dust to lie. Sans wine, sans song, sans singer, and sans end. Well, it seems to me our friend Omar seems to be making a bit much of this shortness of life. But we'll do something else with it too. So let's listen to Swami Kriyananda, stanza 23.
Stanza 23. Make the most of what we yet may spend, before we too into the dust descend. Dust into dust, and under dust to lie. Sans wine, sans song, sans singer, and sans end.
Some of you may have in your life at some point seen the movie or read the story of the life of Charles Lindbergh. When he crossed the Atlantic in 1920-something, he received an enormous amount of acclaim. I've read a book about his life, a biography. I've several times watched the old movie, The Spirit of St. Louis, and I've watched a documentary about that famous flight. Lindbergh's acclaim was extraordinary. The ticker tape parade in New York City, his reception at Orly Airfield and in Paris, all around the world, this man received an acclaim that seems so far out of proportion to his accomplishment. Now, I suppose in those days, flight was as exciting to people as perhaps the moonshot was, the moon landing in America in whatever that was, 69 perhaps. We all know where, those of us who were alive, we can all remember what we were doing at that particular time. Nonetheless, it's extraordinary, really, the acclaim that Lindbergh received. And although Omar, yet again, in yet another stanza, is decrying the impermanence of material life, of one human life, of the fleeting pleasures of the flesh, and the preoccupations of daily life, I'd like to talk about the chickens that come home to roost. You know, the law of karma, although lots of people use the word karma nowadays, they didn't in earlier generations. I suppose my parents must have heard the word at some point, but I'm sure it was also unfamiliar to them. And even in the Orient, where the term is very familiar, a lot of people misunderstand what it means. I don't want to get into the deeper meaning and the operation of the law of karma, but when I talk about the chickens that come home to roost, I is just as well content to be confined to one singular lifetime. Nonetheless, Paramahansa Yogananda stated that Charles Lindbergh was the soul of Abraham Lincoln reincarnated, and that the out of proportion acclaim Lindbergh received for his transatlantic flight was specifically the consequence of the earned acclaim he didn't live to receive because of his assassination as Abraham Lincoln. Well, I don't know what to think about Charles Lindbergh as a reincarnation of Abraham Lincoln, but it does illustrate an interesting point. And the point I want to make about chickens that come home to roost, as I said, I'm content to confine to one singular life, lest I get beyond my pay grade as it relates to my understanding of the law of karma between lifetimes. You see, it's true that all of the experiences of life, the pleasures and the pains, as Omar talks about, become as unto dust. But that doesn't mean that their impact is unworthy. Do you remember the stanza that one of us read about? Omar said, "Isn't the rose that springs out of the grave of some distant Caesar, some great conqueror, more red for that fact?" And the meaning of that quatrain was that our actions and our consciousness especially outlive the mere one lifetime that a particular human body is entitled to have. And so what I want to talk about the chickens that come home to roost is sort of the more subtle and lasting impact of one lifetime, as opposed to Omar's emphasis about our fleeting attachments. I don't deny that, of course, but what I mean is that even in a singular lifetime, what I have observed, whether in my own lifetime or that of many others of my own acquaintance and similar age, is that, life preoccupies us, okay? But that doesn't mean our minds aren't preoccupied in different ways that maybe don't find outer expression, because in that particular lifetime there are other more important things that occupy our outer behavior and actions. Take, for example, somebody who wants to be famous, okay? I remember Swami Kriyananda making some passing references to having the desire for fame in past lives, which is why in his lifetime as Swami Kriyananda, he seemed to pretty much do everything to quash or redirect that particular lingering chicken, and would often do things that would seem to be at odds with his overall mission and dharma to spread the message and teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. And so he was wary of, didn't want to buy into the temptation to use his dharma for personal aggrandizement. He was very cautious in that respect, and I respect him for doing that, even though as his follower, if you will, he could sometimes be frustratingly and seemingly unaware of opportunities to spread that message. Nonetheless, so these chickens have to do with our mental preoccupations, which, as I say, they don't always find opportunities or expression in a given lifetime, but towards the end of that lifetime, those chickens of preoccupation, those chickens of desire and ambition, as well as the spiritual ambitions that may not have seemed to have found worthy expression in this lifetime, return to us. One simple way they do is in the fact that many people find, I answered a letter or an inquiry just the other day about this. Somebody asked, well, why is it seems like people don't really get serious about their spiritual life until later in life? Well, there's lots of good reasons for that. But it's true that if one has a genuine and sincere spiritual yearning, that because of other karmas that take place in life, doesn't seem to have the opportunity to find more fuller expression, that as we get older, maybe we retire, whatever, we have more opportunity and more of a burning interest, more of a compulsion to really get serious about our spiritual life. Well, that's not bad. I mean, yes, it would have been wonderful to have, dedicated one's life to one's spiritual ambitions, if that's the right way of putting it. But, we have to work things out. And I've watched where people who really wanted to meditate more found themselves frustrated by having to change diapers or go off to work or deal with their marriage and, all that sort of thing. But that frustration, I would tell them, is there to strengthen our commitment, not to frustrate it. We have to work things out, in other words. And besides, honestly and truthfully, if one so loves God, there's nothing that really prevents our mind from making God the pole star of our thoughts. Yogananda said that, he said that everybody, it's hard for me to imagine everybody, but he said that I'll just say most people have at the back of their minds, rotating around it, some driving desire, ambition. Maybe it's a fear. He didn't use the word fear, but I'm sure that could also be the case. Some sort of underlying preoccupation, mental preoccupation, whether spiritually uplifting or something far less so. And those chickens come home to roost, as I say, as I see. It can be, for example, look at the one chicken of your body. If you've neglected your body through lack of exercise or wrong diet, those chickens come home to roost later in life, don't they? Well, the same is true of the other chickens, the mental and emotional, desire and fear-born, as well as spiritually uplifting ambitions. And thus it is. This culminates in the teaching that what we think about when we die determines our next lifetime. I mean, that's, whoa, right? And it seems a little unfair. It isn't unfair, because to really focus in that way at death takes a certain amount of determination. And so as you live is how you die. But nonetheless, both the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna in the Gita, but also in the Egyptian Book of the Dead and the Tibetan Book of the Dead, all these traditions also affirm that we get one last chance, one final exam, as Swami Kriyananda put it, by which we can focus our mind, if we're lucky. Some people die in a crash or die unconscious, and so those people lose that. So you can't depend on on that exit strategy, but it doesn't make that it isn't true. What I'm saying is that the latter part of life holds a special significance for us. You might say it's kind of a reincarnation, a last-ditch opportunity. I'm not suggesting to you younger listeners that you can put off till tomorrow, because you never know, you may not get that chance. But I am saying that for many people, that chance or that burden comes round. Those things that, I think of unrequited love, for example. How much of that preoccupies the great drama of life for people. I'm not saying that the opportunity to fulfill that unrequited love necessarily comes, but the desire for it may be resurrected in your mind. You need to deal with it, in other words. Let it go, for example. So this is another aspect of what Omar is talking about. He's reminding us that wine, women, and song, poor women, they take it in the short, so to speak. Wine, women, and song, pardon my language, but is not just for naught. It's that some of those things that we focus on are going to haunt us like ghosts, you see. And when those things are unfulfilled and the karma of that has not yet found fulfillment, those things are going to plague our minds. And so when we enter maybe retirement and we think, oh, I'll meditate more then then you try to meditate more and your body's broken and you can't meditate, or your thoughts are just preoccupied with all these chickens that are coming home to roost. Those who do not make God their summer guest, I think it was Lahiri Mahashai said, will not find God present in the winter of life. So this is what Omar is saying. Be careful what you wish for, as the warning is. You get 3 wishes. You get to rub the genie of life, and you get 3 shots, which is to say spiritual, mental, and physical. You get three shots, 3 ways to live your life, and you had better watch out what you wish for. This is really what Omar is reminding us at whatever age we may be. Okay, great souls, that's my happy